I've had a lot of time to think recently, and if I could go back in time to when I was first learning to code, there are several things that I would definitely do differently. That said, I'm happy with where I ended up, I'm happy with where I'm at now, and I think that should be the first lesson for anyone who's just starting on their journey learning to code. No matter what path you take, no matter what course you use, as long as you can, number one, find a way to enjoy the challenge of learning to code, and number two, remain consistent in your learning, good things will happen and you'll reach your goal of becoming a highly paid developer. It might take you a little bit longer than you would have liked, but if you can stay consistent, if you can keep learning and push through the hard times, you will get there. The number one enemy of anyone learning to code is burnout. If you quit, good things just can't happen. But if you stay consistent, you'll get there. Trust me. Now, I definitely think I could have reached my goal of becoming a paid web developer sooner had I done these things. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first one. The first thing that I would have done differently is I would have stopped using my mouse so much, and I would have learned basic keyboard shortcuts for, first of all, for my computer, and secondly, for the programs that I use most often. So let me show you what I mean in VS Code. One is to duplicate a line. Maybe you have several lines of code that are doing similar things, or you're just outputting something different and you need to tweak the line. By using Alt, Shift, and down, you can duplicate that line, and then if you use Alt and the up or down arrows, you can move that line to wherever you would like. Another one is to select multiple instances of the same text within a file. So let's say I want to select this tailpress content start. What I'll do is I will select that using Alt, Shift, and the left arrow key to select it. So Alt, Shift, and the left, I've selected that. Now with Command D or Control D, I can select the other instances of it. So maybe this needs to say something else. Maybe it needs to say Taylor's action. This is most useful when you have similar sections with the same CSS classes. You can select multiple instances of that text and change all of them at once. Another one that's great is Control, Shift, or Command, Shift, and F. Let's say I am browsing the front end of a site and I need to make a change to the header. I find the CSS class I need, but I'm not sure where that code is in the WordPress theme, or maybe it's even in a WordPress plugin. So let's say I'm looking for a class that starts with BB header. I can see within app.css there are lots of styles for this, but it only shows up in the header.php file. So rather than me manually looking through the file system in the theme, trying to figure out where this CSS class is, by using Command Shift F, I can locate that much, much faster. And actually, I navigate my way through WordPress themes like this all the time now. Another good shortcut that becomes very helpful is to open and close the side navigation there, the sidebar in VS Code. Maybe you need a little more space to work with. Using Command B or Control B, you can open or close that very easily. And lastly, rather than using the mouse to select a line of text and then hitting backspace or delete to remove it, I can use Control or Command Shift left to select the line, or I can simply use Command backspace to delete the entire line. So I do this a lot when going through and deleting unneeded lines of code, and it really saves me a ton of time, both within VS Code, but also if I'm working on a text document or whatever it might be. These are really transferable, and learning these shortcuts will just make your life easier as you're trying to follow along with tutorials, as you're trying to build cool things. It will make it more fun and you'll feel like you have these superpowers. Refraining from using your mouse so much will really make you a better developer in so many ways. You can tab through programs, you can tab through pages, and it will also, as a web developer, it will really show you just how inaccessible much of the internet is. By tabbing through my own website, I can navigate the website pretty similarly to how someone with a screen reader might navigate it. So, one of the first things to do when you are reviewing the accessibility of a website is to just tab through the site and see how much of the site you can access without using a mouse. Because someone who is visually impaired likely won't be using a mouse, and you'll be surprised. I bet there are several sections of your website or of your client's website that are inaccessible to people who cannot use a mouse. So the less you rely on your mouse and the more you can learn shortcuts, the more you can tab through websites and forums, not only will you be a faster developer, a faster computer user, but you'll be more focused on things that are important for accessibility as you build the modern web. Similar to learning shortcuts, I wish I would have started using the terminal much sooner and relying on it for more things. The more I use the terminal, the faster I am, the more my development workflow speeds up, the less afraid I am of working with things like Git or debugging problems with NPM packages or conflicting things like that. If you are a developer, you'll have to work with NPM, you'll have to work with the terminal at least a little bit. And so the sooner you start using the terminal, first of all, the more professional you will look, but second of all, the better of a developer you will be. So let me just show you how fast I can go from opening my terminal to working on a WordPress theme. All right, so this is a bit of a sandbox site that I've been working on. And if I wanted to access the theme, the first thing I would do is I would open up my terminal. I use iTerm, and I'm going to navigate to the theme file directory. I know that's within my local sites. I know it's called bbnew. Then I can go through app, public. Now I'm in the root folder, so I go through WP content, themes, and I'll list out the themes that are available. And I want to cd or change directory into the Tailpress theme. Now I can open it up in VS Code, and just like that, I'm developing. Rather than using my mouse and clicking through all of those folders, it was so much easier and so much faster for me just to do that in the terminal. Next, I wish I would have been okay with spending so much time on just HTML and just CSS. It's amazing how many JavaScript developers, how many WordPress developers I come across who just throw everything in a div, and they don't seem to know how to write semantic HTML. At least that's not really on their radar. Same goes with CSS. So many developers really breeze by CSS when, as you are someone entering the job market, CSS can be your bread and butter. There are a lot of jobs and tasks that agency owners can give you if you can write good quality CSS along with semantic HTML. And even if you become a React developer and you're writing really complex code, all of that needs to go within semantic HTML. You need to use the correct tags. It might work if you don't, but by using the correct HTML, it will be a much better application. It will be much more accessible, and it's really what employers are looking for. A lot of things can be taught, but if you're someone who pays attention to the details, uses the right HTML tags, tries to write clean code as best you can, that's someone that employers are looking for. So don't feel bad if you are taking a long time learning CSS, learning HTML. People spend their entire lifetime, their entire career learning these things. So really take your time and master the fundamentals. It might not seem like it, but having those solid CSS chops will really, really pay off as you advance as a developer. Probably the number one thing that I would do differently if I was starting to learn to code over again is I would have started to code with other people almost immediately from the get-go. Real growth did not happen for me until I started coding with, first of all, people who were better than me, but also people who had started later than I did, and I was really a bit more experienced than them. By coding with others, You have to learn to express what you're thinking. You have to learn how to say things out loud. I don't know if this has happened to you, but so many times I'll get stuck on a problem, and then all it takes is for me to ask someone for help and say, hey, this is what I've tried, this is what's going on, and suddenly it dawns on me. Literally, as I'm telling the other person what my problem is, I figure it out. And I think that's because I am forced to vocalize what's going on. I'm forced to walk through the steps, what I've done, what I haven't done, what I've considered, and what's going on. Those communication skills are so valuable as you become a paid developer. You'll need to work with clients, you'll need to work with team members, you'll need to work with designers, and so those communication skills are so important. Not only that, but working with other people is very motivating. You can see their thought process, they can share their ideas with you, and it's really a great way of getting you out of your shell. I can't recommend this strongly enough. Don't try to learn to code on your own. Find people that you can do paired programming sessions with. Find people where you can work on fun projects with, and this will really exponentially speed up your path to becoming a paid web developer. Also, you need to remember that connections are generally what get people jobs. Of course, along with their experience and skills, but connections are really the number one thing that determines whether or not most people get the job that they have. And the more people that you meet, the more people that you work with and interact with, the more likely you are to have that network of connections that can really help when you're looking for a job. Another huge mistake I made when learning to code was I was very hesitant to use anything that was pre-built. A pre-built CMS like WordPress. I was hesitant to use a slider library when I needed to build an image slider. I was just hesitant to use anything that was already built for me, and that was a huge mistake because as a web developer, you're constantly asked to integrate one tool with another or to use an API that's already built. As an example, let's take the slider library. If you were going to build your own image slider, first of all, it would take you way longer than any client would want to pay. And second of all, it would not be as good as a product built by an experienced developer or even a team of developers. They've spent lots of time testing, they've taken accessibility into account, they have taken their clients' needs into account, and they have much more experience than you do. So rather than saying, I'm going to build my own tool, you can then learn how to read the documentation for a library, how to implement that per your requirements, and you can even poke around in the code and see how they've structured things and then use that knowledge in future projects that you have. Looking through code written by people who are better developers than you obviously can make you a much better developer. So by learning to read documentation and then read code that other people have written, you are going to make yourself a much better developer much faster. My last piece of advice for you today is to start applying to those jobs and those freelance gigs sooner. Even before you're ready, you need to start applying, and here's why. I've seen so many people learn to code and really become pretty skilled developers only to look around, to look up from their keyboard and say, wow, what's next? I would be terrified to get on a call with a potential freelance client, or I have no idea what these jobs are even asking for. Don't let that happen to you. Well before you feel like you're ready, start applying to jobs. You'll see what kind of requirements these job postings are listing. You'll see what these freelance clients are looking for, and you'll start to tailor your learning path, your freelance projects, etc., towards those goals. You really need to start thinking about that first job and those freelance gigs long before you're ready. So don't wait. Start applying. The worst thing that you can hear is no, we don't feel like you have enough experience. But think of it another way. It really only takes one yes to get that first job, to get that foot in the industry, and then you're set. After that first job, it becomes much easier, and you're then paid to learn. So your learning will really take off. You'll be able to dedicate much more time to it, and you'll have done it. then be a web developer. So start applying to those first jobs, those first gigs much sooner, and it will ultimately help you be more successful. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, if you're someone who's just learning to code, burnout is the enemy, and if you can find a way to enjoy the challenge of coding, if you can find a way to be consistent, good things will happen, I promise. Let me know what you thought of the video. Leave me a comment down below with a question, with a suggestion, really whatever is on your mind. I will definitely see it. I have lots of ideas for videos and I'm going to be putting them out regularly, so do check back and I hope to see you soon. Take care.